Is there much left to impress investors heading into next year? Here to take on that question, Tom Lee of Fundstrat. He joins me at Post 9, also a CNBC contributor. Tom, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, great to see you, Mike.
So we can stack up all the positives. I mean, I know you've been kind of in gear with that idea that the economy would power through, inflation would come down, the Fed could become friendlier, earnings are going higher. Big question to me is, how do we set expectations for the year to come, given that that's all in the books?
It's a great question because, you know, we have two back-to-back 20% years, and now investors are wondering how much good news is baked in. But if we look at the 2025 environment, it's a great setup because we have a new administration coming in that's maybe pro-animal spirits, you know, a Trump put. We have a dovish Fed, and as you're pointing out, interest rates are kind of calming down after rising. And we know there's still $7 trillion of cash on the sidelines, and I think sentiment's coming back into check. You mentioned that before with the AAII numbers. So I think it's a good setup for investors. I wouldn't be too worried about the next 12 months.
So don't be too worried. I mean, it seems as if there are all these supportive factors, and when you mentioned the 20% up years in a row, history says actually, you know, the following year is up more often than not as well. What do you mean, do you think, specifically by the new administration being pro-animal spirits? First of all, it's true.
Yeah.
You've kind of seen it at work. It seems to pull in that direction, but are there specifics that the market is fixated on that it's going to drive that dynamic?
Yes, I think that the market's trying to figure out exactly how this animal spirits plays out in markets, but I would say we've got a Treasury Secretary that equity markets approve of. We do know that the last Trump presidency cared very much about what stock prices do, and Jeremy Siegel said this is the most stock market focused president ever. And I think that the uncertainty is around trade and the potential risks around tariffs, but we'll have to see. I mean, that's something markets are going to have to deal with it from an uncertainty perspective.
It's interesting to me that, you know, the way the market has behaved in the last several weeks, but even going into the election, was we need to own more cyclicals, we need to own more financial stocks. We're going to reprice this market for maybe a growth acceleration even, or at least maintaining above trend growth. Meanwhile, though, we're only a couple months removed from a pretty big growth scare. Job growth has kind of slowed to a point. The housing market seems pretty locked up. It's kind of interesting how the sentiment has kind of jumped ahead. Is the economic numbers positioned to actually validate that view?
Markets tend to be forward-looking, so I would expect this. I know there has been a recession in durable goods and in housing and auto sales, principally because of high rates, which have made affordability an issue. That's really on the come next year. I mean, I think the spread of 10 years and mortgages should come down, and the 10-year hopefully behaves. And I think if there's more confidence and more supply, I think housing actually could lead this recovery. I mean, I think that's why home builders actually started to act better this week as well.
Yes, they seem very sensitive too to yields, you know, sort of halting their rise as well. I guess the question is, if we believe it's still a supportive environment, and pretty much all the things you can identify would suggest you shouldn't be too worried about next year. The second question is something like the S&P 500 the best vehicle to capitalize on that?
I think investors are still trying to figure this out. We did a survey with our institutional investors and our RIA clients last week. The majority of institutional investors don't think FANG is the leading trade. They're actually betting on cyclicals. But if you look at the RIA world, the majority are betting on FANG. So I think the market is still undecided whether to be long the Mag 7 or the cyclicals. I'm inclined to be more cyclical and bet even on small caps having a very big year next year.
Yeah.